Is it up? Like,
Yep, everything's good.
okay, so hello everyone. Welcome to my Final Fantasy panel. I apologize in advance because up until very recently, I didn't think I was going to be able to make it to the con this weekend, so I put this up together very last minute. But basically, I'm going to be talking about just my what Final Fantasy is, why it appeals to me so much, and just games I've played in the series, like which ones really like, which ones I don't like as much, and would love to hear in the chat what your favorites are, or what your history of Final Fantasy is. So let's get started. This is so Final Fantasy is it is at heart a Japanese RPG. And I put up this video because I kind of feel like this is just especially the early games, this is just Final Fantasy in a nutshell, and I love everything about it.
Long ago, magic ruled the world. But after the big magic war, the crystal was destroyed, and magic died forever. But some people believe magic could return.
Wake up! Wake up! How did you sleep? Oh, you're not replying. Well, that's okay. Your silence makes you easier to project onto. Now hurry! The Inciting Incident Festival is today. I hear the town's mysterious crystal shard will be on display. See you in 40 to 60 hours!
I can't wait to see the crystal shard.
I heard a rumor that monsters are coming back.
Expositional yet pointless dialogue.
For as long as I can remember, this crystal shard, which is one of several, has protected our village from bad things that are not good. Oh no! An airship from the evil and weirdly high-tech empire from one town over!
I'm the evil emperor who's controlled by a demon. With the power of the crystal shards, I will rule Terragaia! That's the name of the planet. Weirdly sexual henchmen. Burn the village, steal the shard, and let that boy run away.
Oh, I'm the final boss of this game! What a twist! Oh,
I can't wait
I
to
heard
see the
rumor
crystal
that monsters
shard.
are coming back.
Phew! I can't believe. Oh, okay. Phew! I can't believe we all escaped. I'm a tomboy who's secretly the Emperor's daughter. My name is Girl, and I'm your spunky hometown friend / bare-knuckle boxer. We're both in love with you for some reason. Now play mini-games to compete for our affection. I've never met somebody so good at this arbitrary task. I think I'm falling in love with you.
oh, I killed your father, and I'm killing you because it turns out you were the final crystal all along! You see, you are the power of the crystal, refined into the shape of a girl by the god moon. So I fuse your soul power with the earth navel, Terragaia's heartstream will... And that's my plan. Now, I shall escape while everyone is distracted by this poorly animated CGI cutscene!
Should we enter the castle? Once we go in, there's no coming back. Yeah, let's go play some more mini games first. Hit me.
So this is it, the final battle.
Let's do it.
Yo, I'm a cat who can talk. Pretty far out idea, huh? Behold, my final form that is somehow gross but still sexy!
attack is powered by our love and our soul power.
I heard a rumor that monsters are coming back.
No! JK, I have 2 more forms.
So yeah, at its core, Final Fantasy is a Japanese RPG where a plucky band of characters from different walks of life come together to defeat a villain who is almost certainly trying to end the world one way or another. And stop that. And I absolutely love it. Cliches and all. So, what's my Final Fantasy experience? Well, full disclaimer, I have not played all of the entries in the series yet. My introduction to it was through Kingdom Hearts. Yes, I'm one of those people. I had no idea what it meant when I heard that Kingdom Hearts was a crossover between Disney and Final Fantasy. I had just never heard of it before. But I really liked Leon and Aerith and Tidus and Waka and Selphie and Auron and everybody who Sora kept running into. And eventually, one of my friends lent me Final Fantasy X and was like, here, you should try this. You'll probably like it. It's on the PS2, just like Kingdom Hearts. And, you know, a lot of those characters make cameos. That did not go well. Again, I really didn't know what the series was. I was not familiar with the turn-based battle system, so I was really confused, like, going into it. I'm like, why are we taking turns hitting each other? Why can't I move? What is going on? I gave up around the Mihan High Road because I just kept dying too many times. But eventually I learned a bit more about how the series worked, and I decided to try get back into it with Final Fantasy VII, which is, like, I think a lot of people's first experience with Final Fantasy. That was, like, the big one. And by that point, I had come to accept that, yes, this is a turn-based. It's not like Kingdom Hearts where you're running around dodging and fighting enemies. Like, this is how it works. And I accepted that and just became completely engrossed in Cloud's story. So while Final Fantasy X was the first one I ever played, 7 was the first one I actually beat, and so it has a special place in my heart for that reason. Since then, I've played and beaten 6, 8, 9, and 12, and I came very close to beating 10 again, but I ended up rage quitting again. But I was up to, like, the final bosses, so I've played most of it. Someday I'll get back to that one. I've also dabbled in the first Final Fantasy, Final Fantasy V, and 13, but I've never beaten them, and I haven't gotten far enough in them that I felt like I could really talk about them. There's also, the series has a lot of spin-offs and sequels, like the Final Fantasy VII compilation with Crisis Core and Dirge of Cerberus. There's the Dissidia crossover series, World of Final Fantasy, and of course Kingdom Hearts. Although Kingdom Hearts has really become its own thing, it's not very attached to Final Fantasy anymore. So, what is the appeal of Final Fantasy? Really, for me, it's how each of the mainline titles involves this scrappy band of protagonists coming together to stop a great evil that threatens the world. I am an absolute sucker for the found family trope, and this is kind of found family, the series. And in some cases, there isn't even a true central character. Like with Final Fantasy VI, Tara Branford's kind of become the face of that game, but most of the party, like, I'll talk more about that game in a little bit, um, but there are really several characters with that are really important in that plot, and they kind of fade in and throughout the story. Like some of them are more important than others, and it just like everybody's kind of the protagonist. So if you like the found family trope, then you're gonna love this series. Um, and for me, how much I like any given title really depends on how well the characters in the party play off of each other. And also, this series strikes a good balance, I think, between being heavily focused on story and character while still remaining accessible to newcomers. Each mainline entry focuses on a new setting with a new cast of characters. So, like, for me to say that I started with 10 and then went to 7, like, I can still follow along because it's a totally different story each time. You don't need to know what happened to Cecil or Bart's or Terra to understand Cloud's situation or Squall's or Zidane. You're always starting out on a clean slate. Some entries have ended up becoming popular enough to earn their own sequels, which leads to very confusing titles like Final Fantasy X-2. But I will take a weird title over having to go through the video game equivalent of the MCU. I have Kingdom Hearts for that. I don't need two series like that. Also, just every single Final Fantasy game, regardless of the story or the characters, they all look gorgeous and they all sound gorgeous. Like the fan base can get very contentious, but as far as I'm aware, the one thing like everyone agrees on is they look pretty and the music is glorious. I love listening to the orchestra arrangements on the Distant World albums, even the tracks from games that I haven't played where I don't have that emotional connection to what I'm hearing. They still sound incredible. And the basic combat structure hasn't changed very much. Like it started out most games were turn based and then it's gradually moved to more of an action style combat. While that's been pretty slow to change, every Final Fantasy entry does something different with regards to how the characters use magic and special skills, how they level up and everything. So you're there's certain things about the series that stays the same, but there's always going to be changes, so you always feel like you're going into something fresh. So now I am going to get into individual games that I've played and liked. So 7 is the big one. This is the one that most people know, even if they have never picked up a Final Fantasy game in their life. Like, I remember when Sephiroth was announced for Super Smash Brothers, and there were so many comments like, I knew who this was even before he showed up, because as soon as you hear One Winged Angel, you know what's going on. And a lot of people know what happened to Aerith. I knew what happened to Aerith before I played it. So why is it so popular? Well, for starters, Final Fantasy VII was the first for a series in several ways. It was the first to make a leap to 3D graphics, and it was also the first Final Fantasy game that showed up on the PlayStation instead of a Nintendo system, which is really the whole, like, everything with Nintendo and Sony, like, that's a whole thing in and of itself. Uh, it's it's got Final Fantasy VII just has this sprawling epic story that takes place over the course of 3 discs, and it's led by a compelling cast of characters. The soundtrack is iconic, the characters are iconic, and so if you don't know the story, I'll just go through it real quick. It starts out with this mercenary named Cloud Strife, who has been hired by an eco-terrorist group called Avalanche, not because he really cares about the environment or the planet, but they pay good, so That's really all he cares about. He's also involved because one of the leaders of Avalanche is his childhood friend Tifa, and through a series of events, he ends up meeting a woman named Aerith, who is the last of an ancient race that can commune with the planet. And she is wanted by the evil corporation that controls the city. So one thing leads to another. Cloud, Barrett, the leader of Avalanche, Tifa, Aerith, and some other characters end up leaving the city, not just to stop the evil Shinra Corporation, but also to confront a dangerous person from Cloud's past named Sephiroth, who has his own reasons for wanting to destroy the planet.
Who is the monster
One
that we
example.
all love.
What's that?
He's the monster we all love.
He is the monster we all love.
Like, I can fix him. I can change him.
You ominous Latin chorus that makes everyone shake in their boots.
Exactly.
And
Dude, so pretty.
It's interesting because this game also has these really strong ecological themes, as you might have noticed. But it also, especially the remake, also doesn't shy away from the harm that Avalanche has caused too. Like the opening with the remake, you go through the whole bombing mission again, and it's really intense and it's really fun. And then you're like the team escapes and they go their separate ways, and you're basically wandering through the city while like people are standing around in shock and like panicking over there was an explosion at the factory, and they don't see Avalanche as doing anything good. They're like, you're taking out our electricity, and like people are getting killed and stuff. What are you doing? And then you find out later that Shinra had a lot to do with that too. So, but there's some morally gray areas there, and I like the complexity there. Also, everyone has a character arc of some kind, whether it's exploring their traumatic past or learning things about themselves and their histories that they didn't know, or changing their outlook on life. Like, everybody kind of gets their chance to shine. I really like Cloud's story, and Aerith and Tifa and Barrett. I love all of them. And so many of them have shown up in Kingdom Hearts. I feel bad saying this. That game really does not give them their due. Aerith is just wonderful. She is like, you think you're getting this like pure white mage type character, gentle, friend to all living things. And she is a good-hearted person, but she's also this funky, hilarious, like does not want Cloud leaving her behind. She just wants to jump in and help in any way possible, and the game does a really good job of getting you to care about her and her story before I feel bad spoiling it, but like everyone knows what happens to her with Sephiroth. Like, I've seen some debate over whether that's an example of fridging or not, and I'm kind of like on the fence about it, but I think if there was ever an example of fridging done right, that's probably it, because it's not just a case of like, oh, we're just gonna kill this female character for drama. Like, there's like I'm losing my train of thought, sorry. There's a reason that she is getting in the way of Sephiroth's plans, and so he decides to do something about that. It's her own actions that drive that situation, and also like she's a character, not just a shiny trophy that you have to rescue and stuff. She has her own goals and feelings and everything, and the party has to take that into account. And as I said before, the soundtrack is iconic. When the announcement trailer came out for the remake, And I was just kind of watching it, not sure what was going on. As soon as I heard the opening notes to opening bombing mission, that's when I just totally lost my mind and was like smashing the keyboard. the, there's so many good tracks in that game. And it was the first one I ever beat. You never forget your first, and 7 just left a really good impression on me. So I'm gonna move on to.
I actually played. Sorry to interject. I actually played 7 when it came out.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, I cried. I was shocked. I was so upset when she died.
Yeah. Well, and now there's this whole question of whether she's gonna die in the remake or not. And I don't know, like.
Well, if she doesn't, is it really can it really be considered a remake? Isn't it just a reboot at that point?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't know what I want to see happen there. There's like, I don't know if you've played the remake or not.
I haven't yet. I don't have a PlayStation.
Okay, I won't spoil too much, but there's this sense of like there's almost this meta sense of like they're just going through it's the same game up to a point, but there is this sense of like you the player have done this before. Is this going to happen the same way all over again, or is there a way to change things so that everybody lives? I don't know what's gonna happen, but
I am I want to play it. I was hoping it would be out for PC already, but
yeah,
I am very curious. I did sorry.
I love you.
I put over 150 hours into Final Fantasy VII. I had the gold chocobo. I had Knights of the Round Table mirrored. I had all of it.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, see, I didn't have any of that stuff. Trying to think of what I did have. I did make sure that I looked up a walkthrough. I wanted to make sure, okay, I'm definitely getting Yuffie and I'm definitely getting Vincent in my party. That is not up for debate. But I never did Yuffie's Wutai story because I heard that she steals all your materia, and I know she gives it back, but I was just like, no, I can't lose my materia. I rely so heavily on that, so I just stayed as far away as possible.
Vincent, I think
yeah.
it's my favorite.
I should really go back and do that one. Conquer my fear. So, next up, Final Fantasy VI, which came before 7, and doesn't get as much love as 7. It's kind of a shame because it just had the bad luck of coming out right before 7, so it kind of lives in 7's shadow, I think, a little bit. But at the same time, it's definitely up there in terms of popular Final Fantasy titles. Even if Square doesn't give it all the love it deserves, it's got a very passionate fan base. It is fantastic. Very different in a lot of ways from 7. It's what's interesting is how many protagonists it has, and it often splits the party up for the first half of the game, so you're kind of forced to level everyone up. Everyone keeps going off into these little groups. I think there's about 20 playable characters overall, including the optional ones. One of them is even a Moogle, so you get to play as a Moogle. That's fun. And while there are several that get more focused than others, like Terra and Cell's Locke, the Figaro brothers, who I love very much, um, everyone has their own arc. And another thing that's unique about 6 is how much you invest in each of these characters is entirely up to you after a certain point, because without going into spoilers, something happens about midway through the game that splits the party, and Cells embarks on a quest to find her friends before they face off against the big bad. and there are a couple that you're required to find because you need a full party. But after that, you are free to go up to Kefka's tower and take him on, and it's just optional to find everyone else. But it is so much more rewarding to find everyone else. And even after that, there are places you can go, like the ruins of Cian's home, and go through his whole. He kind of undergoes this whole arc because everyone in his kingdom got poisoned, and he has to kind of overcome his grief there. And it's really, really good. Um, I love that Terra and Cells are both like they're both women who are like really interesting characters and lead the game in their own ways. That's pretty cool. I love Kefka. He is basically the Final Fantasy version of the Joker, and it's great. It's fantastic. It's wonderful. Um, and the way the game plays out, you are finding different espers who are magical creatures that kind of live in a I guess I'm trying to remember exactly how it works. They live in a different, almost like a parallel universe, I think. And so but the evil empire has been capturing them and using their magic to get more powerful and stuff. And so your party gets espers, and that determines your magic and abilities. So you basically decide what spells and abilities everyone's gonna get. I remember I gave Cian the Ultima spell because I really like Cian, but he has like the worst special attack. It's the slow countdown, so I was like, dang it, I need to make him important. I'm gonna make him useful. I'm gonna give him the most useful spell in the game, so I have an excuse to keep him in the party. But yeah, that's 6. It started out on the Super Nintendo. There is a PlayStation version that got remade. And what's it on now?
Final Fantasy VI is American 3.
Yeah, that's right. That's the other thing. It was known as Final Fantasy 3 in the US for a while because they only ported over the original Final Fantasy and Final Fantasy 4. So like, we'll just change the titles. The Americans won't notice. But they finally brought 2, 3, and 5 over here. But I still need to play them. So yeah, that is 6. Highly recommend it. And then there's 8. This one had a bit of a rocky start for me. I tried playing it twice, and I finally beat it during one of my Real Women of Gaming streams. Like, you would think because Squall Leonhardt's in it and I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan, I would be all over it. And I did. I wanted to play it. I wanted to see, okay, what game does he come from? And who's Renoa? And Cypher. Yeah, I hated that guy in Kingdom Hearts, but I want to I want to play it. I have semi-ranted about this before, but I was not a fan of how the story began. Just for comparison's sake, Final Fantasy VII's intro, you're a part of a covert bombing mission, and you have to get in and out of the evil company's power plant alive. Final Fantasy VI, you're an amnesiac young woman who has just broken from the control of the evil empire, and you must escape from a town before Final Fantasy's version of the Joker catches you. These are immediately compelling introductions to a story. Like, as soon as I start playing this, like, okay, I am hooked. And other Final Fantasy games are similar. Like, you have to rescue a princess. You have to kidnap a princess. You have to escape from your home city while it's going through the apocalypse. Your home has been taken over by an evil empire. Final Fantasy VIII starts with Squall needs to pass his final exam to graduate from army school. I was not very invested in that. But it does get better. It just took a while for me to get into it. And the draw system that's part of Final Fantasy VIII's gameplay really did not help with this endeavor. Instead of gaining magic and abilities through materia espers or unlocking them on a sphere grid, you have to draw spells from your enemies as you fight them. So this can get pretty tedious, especially when combined with the usual turn-based battle system. It often means that you have to choose between attacking or drawing spells so you can attack later. And this really slows down combat. There's no point in level grinding either because the enemies level up with you. Now, I will say this for the draw system: if I invested a lot of time and patience into drawing 99 of one particular spell, it was nice because then I didn't really have to worry about it for a while, like as opposed to conserving magic power. It was kind of nice to just be like, oh yeah, I have unlimited use of this spell for a while. As far as the story goes, the time travel stuff's a little weird, but again, I'm a Kingdom Hearts fan. I'm used to weird. What I really like about this game is Squall's slow but steady progression from a loner to someone who cares deeply about his fellow party members. And I like how it contrasts with Renoa. She is this cheerful girl leading a resistance group, but she really has no idea what she's doing. And so, while Squall has to learn to open up to people more, Renoa has to kind of grow and mature a little. And so they play off of each other well. Also, Laguna is fantastic, and his theme song is fantastic. I think this game deserves more love than it gets. It also helps my with my overall impression of the game that I finally, if I remember right, I finally beat it after I had beaten 12, and I'll get to 12 in a little bit, but I felt like 8 did a better job of the party bonding with each other and caring about each other. It felt more realistic in this game than 12 did. So it was sort of like, oh, I'm returning to what I liked about this series.
This is my favorite villain too. Adia.
Oh, yeah, I love her too.
She is amazing. I have an Adia somewhere. A little figurine. I don't know where she is now, but I have a bunch of their figures. I never beat Final Fantasy VIII. I tried, and I guess I wasn't powerful enough, but I had reached a point where I couldn't go back. And
yeah,
so I was like, I'm not starting over.
yeah, and well, I didn't realize until someone told me. Like, I'm so used to just level grinding at a certain point.
Yep.
When I'm having trouble with a boss, and finding out, no, that doesn't mean squat because they level up with you. I was like, what is this?
Rude. That's what it is. It's so rude.
Very rude. Rude is the word. Also, I'm realizing I'm looking at Adia, like, there are not a lot of, like, female villains in this series.
Yep.
We need more of that.
Yes. Villains for villain's sake. Why are you evil? Just 'cause.
Yeah.
Just felt like it.
Okay, so Final Fantasy IX. So with 9, after 2 fantasy games set in a futuristic world of gunblades and tanks, 9 returned to a more medieval type setting. Or so it seems. There are some sci-fi elements in there. But this Final Fantasy IX, along with 6, is one of the most popular entries in the series that doesn't get a whole lot of love from Square. It starts out with a young thief named Zidane going into the Kingdom of Alexandria so he and his troop can kidnap Princess Garnet. But as it turns out, Garnet wants to be kidnapped because her mother is an evil tyrant and she is desperate to escape from her. So the group takes off. They add a few more characters to their roster, like Steiner and Vivi, and Freya. Eco. Forget your name, sir. I think it's Amaranth. Um, and similar to 6 and 7, they soon realize that the evil emperor who is trying to ruin everything is not the real threat they should be worried about. That honor belongs to the queen's advisor, Kuja, who has his own ties to Zidane past. I love him. He's fantastic. Um, that being said, I feel bad. I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for this, but I didn't like this game as much as other people do, and I don't know why.
Oh, I love Final Fantasy IX.
Yeah, I get why everyone loves it. The story's good, the characters are fun. It has everything that I like about a Final Fantasy game. It just didn't grab me. And I mean, I definitely liked it. I think my favorite character is Freya. I really like her theme. The whole level where the party goes to Burmecia, her home kingdom, um, is harrowing. Like when it's being conquered by the queen. That's one of the highlights from the game for me. And you would think it has so many Kingdom Hearts vibes with this whole like, you know, like characters questioning their existence, what they were quote unquote programmed to do, and moving beyond that. What makes someone their own person. It's good. Like I don't know why I don't love it as much as some of the others. I don't know, but it is a very good game, and I'm glad that it's getting an animated series soon. I'm looking forward to seeing that. And the music's really good. I don't know what it is, but
It just didn't vibe with you as well.
Yeah, I guess that's the word for it. It didn't vibe with me. I do love the characters though.
It is one of my favorites.
Yeah, it deserves its place as a beloved entry in the series.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Final Fantasy X. So, first things first, I love Tidus. I will fight anyone who says otherwise. He is not Jack's son, he is my son, and I will throw down. I know everyone, I get, yeah, his voice is a little whiny, but he gets put through a lot, and he is a good kid, and I may not understand his love of Blitzball because that game is stupid, but it's okay. He's got a difficult relationship with his parents. He watches his city fall under attack. Then he gets thrown into the future where everything he knows and loves, except for Blitzball, is gone. He doesn't understand anything about Spira. He makes a lot of mistakes, but he's trying. And like Zidane, he cares a lot about the people that he meets from the get-go, which is a nice change from the brooding anti-heroes with Cloud and Squall. Also, I love his romance with Yuna. It's really sweet, and they just like each other right off the bat. Like there's no oh, we don't like each other at first. We got off on the wrong foot. No, they just get along like right away, and they're adorable. And they play off of each other so well. And I love Yuna's journey through the whole game. She's a summoner who is embarking on a quest to defeat Sin. Sin being the monstrosity that destroyed Tidus's home and has plagued Spira for countless centuries. What as a summoner, Yuna's job is to summon the final Aeon that defeats Sin for about 15 years, I think, and then the cycle starts up again. And Tidus is one of the people who is part of Yuna's party, like they're guardians that protect Yuna on her quest to become a full-fledged summoner. But as the story progresses, they start to uncover some sinister truths about what really happens at the end of a summoner's quest, and they decide they have to find another way to defeat Sin and defeat it for good, not just for a brief period of time. So I mentioned previously I have not actually beaten this game, but I've gotten pretty close. One of these days I'll take another crack at the final boss. Um, I, with that being said, I did enjoy my time with this game and the characters. This was notable for being Final Fantasy's first entry on the PlayStation 2, and it was the first one to have voice acting. That part's a little hit or miss. The music is top notch as usual, like Xanarkin, Hymn of the Faith, Tsuchiki Dane. Do I need to say more? They're so beautiful.
And
Man,
Lulu!
yes, Lulu. Lulu is great too.
She is
And
my
Waka.
favorite. I love Lulu.
I love
Wicked
her.
says this is my fave. Blitzball is where it's at.
I'm sorry, I don't like Blitzball.
Oh no.
Lulu and Waka were so cute.
They were.
I didn't
I love
understand
Lulu's
Blitzball
little
either.
like Moogle voodoo dolls that just come up and smack enemies. When I've run out of magic with her.
10-2 has Baby Waka.
Yes, it does. That and this was the first. Yeah, this was the first one in the series to get a sequel, which I haven't played yet. And I know it wasn't as well received as, but I want to actually play it first before I decide on that. And one thing I really love about 10 is how you can switch party members out in the middle of the battle.
Mm-hmm.
And so a lot of the enemies are specifically designed for certain characters. So when I was playing it, there weren't, like, most Final Fantasy games, there gets to a point where I just stop using a certain character, and certain characters just get more leveled up than others. But everyone was, I kind of needed everyone to some extent, and I like just being able to swap people out when I'm thinking, okay, this person might work better um than this person. That was really cool. So yeah, 10. I love 10. 10 is good stuff. um 12, oh, I really wanted to like 12. I really did. I like the characters. I love Vaughn, and I know he's not the protagonist, which I think a lot of people took issue with initially, was that he's kind of advertised as such, but he really isn't. Um, and I think like this game would have been better if like Ash had been the protagonist. But all that to say, my issue with this game is not with any individual character. It's more that they never really felt like a party to me. They go through a lot of adventures together, but something was just missing here. I think what it was, like, and maybe I was playing it wrong, where I was just going through the plot, but I felt like this party desperately needed a scenario like having to stop a talking purple octopus from ruining an opera. Like, they needed to have some silly bonding moments together that wasn't focused on the plot, where they just get to know each other a little better. Like, I want to like them, I do, and they're dealing with this morally gray situation, and I really like Ash's character arc. Like, she starts out as she's obsessed with avenging her father and her dead husband, and over time she mellows out, and she like forsakes blind vengeance, and it's got a great setup, and there's a lot of exploration and stuff. I don't know, it was missing the found family for me, and I need that found family.
I don't even remember this one being advertised, to be honest. I keep forgetting that there was a 12.
I 12 because 12 came out, I think, around roughly the same time as Kingdom Hearts 2. So, or I think it was after Kingdom Hearts 2. but I remember it was around that time, so people were talking about it, and like at that point Final Fantasy was on my radar, so I was like, oh, this is the next Final Fantasy game. And then I just didn't play it. But I wanted to play it, and I streamed it during one of my Real Women Gaming streams. And I like that they were trying to do something different with this game, where it was more about these warring countries and not about this one super evil villain that wants to take over the world. But yeah, I need more character interaction, and I didn't feel like they were missing a lot of like the humor and the heartwarming parts, I think, in this game.
Yes, they do like women in booty shorts and skirts.
Yeah. Yeah. So those are all the ones that I've played, and then there's also the crossovers and spin-offs like Crisis Core. I love Crisis Core. Zack Fair, my beloved. And the Dissidia games. The Dissidia games are a mixed bag for me because they're basically a series of fighting games where everyone in the Final Fantasy series comes together for different plot reasons. The first two games was the Goddess of Harmony and the Goddess of Chaos were duking it out, and they summoned some champions to fight for them. Opera Omnia on the on iOS and Android phones is the goddess Materia, and the god Spiritus are summoning champions and stuff. The story for those games I always felt was kind of weak, and there's a lot of repetitive dialogue with, we need to stop this threat. If we don't stop it, terrible things are going to happen. And but what I love about Dissidia is the character interactions are just top notch. Like, it's just really fun seeing like Squall and Zidane being friends, or Vaughn helping Terra. Kefka and Kuja are the villain comedy duo that I never knew I needed. Just Kefka just driving all the serious villains crazy is wonderful. That's the appeal for me, is just seeing them play off of each other. It's really fun. There's also the Theatrhythm series, which got me back into rhythm games. I thought I was terrible at them, but I like Theatrhythm. It turns out, I guess the reason why I was terrible at Guitar Hero was I didn't really know the songs, but I know the Final Fantasy songs. I listen to them all the time, so I was really into that. Then there's World of Final Fantasy, which is about two siblings going on an adventure, and they interact with chibi versions of the Final Fantasy characters who are adorable. It's a really cute game. The siblings, Lan and Ren, I haven't played in a while, but they really feel like a brother and sister, and I love that. I didn't actually beat that one though. It was a little, in some ways it was a little too easy, because I never really died too many times. You get the sense it's a game that was made for kids, like kids' introduction to Final Fantasy. And some of the battles were just dragging. I wasn't dying, but the other enemy wasn't dying either, and I was just getting tired of it, so I stopped after a while, but it's a fun game.
Thea says I love chibis.
The chibis are adorable. I love them
chibis?
so much.
Chibis are amazing.
And you get to see like little chibi Sephiroth is wonderful. Kingdom Hearts it's not really connected to Final Fantasy. It's just some cameos, and sadly the Final Fantasy characters have gotten less and less prominent in those games. But then Kingdom Hearts 3 didn't have any Final Fantasy cameos at all, and everyone just kind of went nuts. Well, not really went nuts, but E3, like, Nomura was getting so many questions from different reporters, like, okay, that trailer for Kingdom Hearts 3 was really good. Where are the Final Fantasy characters? And one of the interviews, he's like, oh my gosh, you guys keep asking me about the Final Fantasy characters. I didn't think you liked them that much, but okay, fine, I'll put them back in. And so he put them back in the DLC. I'm hoping we get some more, because I don't think the Kingdom Hearts games always do their characters justice, but at the same time, I like how it's basically this alternate universe, and you get to see them in these different environments and interacting with each other. And Aerith is not dead, yay! So I want to see more. I want to see Lightning in there. I want to see what Barrett would be like. And the Final Fantasy 6 and 9 characters, there's only Vivi and Setzer that ever showed up in there. So, and Final Fantasy Tactics and Crystal Chronicles, I have not played them yet, but feel free to sell me on them, because I've heard they're very good.
My all-time favorite Final Fantasy is American 2.
Okay, American 2, so that's Final Fantasy 4?
Yeah, I think so. Yes, Final Fantasy 4. And it has my favorite character, Radia. Is it Radia?
I think it is Radia.
The green-haired summoner, who wears all green. I love her so much. She has such a great story. Like, I like the other characters, they're nice and everything like that. But this was the first one, like, I got into gaming because I played the original Final Fantasy on Nintendo. Because I'm old. But Final Fantasy 4, she's the summoner, and she's just so, like, she's such, like, in the beginning of the game, she's such a timid character, and she comes across as, like, you know, she's very quiet and meek, and she doesn't, like, take up space and everything like that. But, like, you know, further in the game, that eventually changes, and I just have always loved her since then. Like, she just had such a good story.
That does sound really good. I like how, even though the Final Fantasy games don't have a lot in the way of, like, female protagonists, like, there's Lightning in Final Fantasy 13, there's Terra in 6, and I really hope they change that somewhere down the line.
Me too.
I do like how so many of them, I feel like so many of the Final Fantasy women are unique from each other.
Mm-hmm.
And they all have different journeys that they're going on. I mean, right here, you got Lightning, the former soldier. Ferris is a pirate. Yuna is a summoner. And they all have these different arcs and different goals and how they react to things. I would love a crossover that's just the girls hanging out.
Yes.
That would be fun.
And not in bikinis playing games.
Yes. Yeah, that too.
All right. Well, that is all of our time for Is It a Final Fantasy?
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much, Iris.
welcome.
I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. I guess I stopped streaming.
We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come back with Pardon the Pause with Salos.
Hey.
Happy convention, everybody. I'm still not awake. It doesn't matter how.